Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Today I'm hanging out with Cameron and Tara Rout. How are you guys doing today?
So far, so good.
Good.
And I met you guys from D&D and Castle. You guys are the owners of D&D and Castle and are doing really cool high-end D&D vacations, I guess we would call them. If you'd be so kind to introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about you each. Go ahead, Tara.
Okay, well, I was looking at Cam. So Cam and I are brother and sister, as you might tell, because we have the same face. And we started D&D and Castle back in 2017, or our first event was in 2018. And we've just been running it ever since, growing year after year, obviously until the pandemic. But we're back from the pandemic now. We're holding events, live events again. We basically get castles and fill them full of nerds and play D&D as an epic vacation.
Yeah, you hit on the right word there. So I'm Cameron, Tara's brother of Tara, I like to say. And yeah, you hit on a key word there, vacation. I think is the key word. We put on a thing worth spending your vacation time. You know, you're going to get time off work. You're going to go somewhere, and you're going to spend time dedicated to something you love. It's a very unique alternative to some other wonderful but maybe more typical vacation ideas like a cruise or
an
backpacking adventure or all-inclusive in a more tropical locale instead of northern England. But yeah, don't come for the weather. Come for the D&D.
Yeah, well, I will say it is one of the most stressful things I've ever done in my life. So.
Oh, great.
As a DM, not a the players all seem to have a really great time. But you're like, you've got a group of people that you're running a game for, and you're like, but it's not just running a game for them. Like, this is their vacation. This might be the only vacation they take all year. And like, whether they have a good vacation or not might just hinge upon what I'm doing as the DM. So, no pressure.
Yeah, I love to hear that, how stressful it was for you, because it means you're really putting everything into it, right? Like, people are coming to play these games, and I've noticed that all the DMs put 1,000% in it because they also want to make the most of the experience, right? Like, you're coming to run a table for 3 days straight in a castle, right? Like, and it's an opportunity, and people really run with that opportunity. So people are like putting together games that they've always kind of wanted to make, or like, to have that arc and the opportunity to dive into stuff, and people working really hard behind the scenes to put on.
Oh, and you guys, now I just think about it for a second, why you guys were so stressed. First, I remember the first time you came to D&D in a castle, I think it was your first time traveling internationally, and in a country where they speak a foreign language. And
you got stuck in
and you missed your stop on the train, so that was probably pretty stressful.
Yeah.
And the second time you came, all three of you, Ted and Doug, were running like an epic campaign. Like, you were coordinating in between sessions to keep this huge. You guys were doing so much more work.
So the first time after I got there, it was totally stress-free because I was actually a player, right? So I've experienced D&D in the castle both from, a player at the table as well as someone who's, run the game. But yes, the first time there was some travel issues, and I almost got arrested, I think. So
what was it like being on both sides, like playing and DMing? Like, how any interesting insights?
Yeah, so GM Tim was the DM that I played with, and he was a fantastic GM. And I guess like the biggest insight too was like hanging out with the people at your table, because it did get a little cliquey, I think, because just like you spend so much time with that group of people, not necessarily in a bad way, but realizing like realizing the swath of people that are coming to the event, it was kind of cool, and I felt like I got more of that from being a player than I did from being the GM. Having more interactions. And then, but then as a GM, one of the things that I really found was it seemed like most of the players were forever GMs, and like they really wanted an opportunity to come relax and and just play D&D, and they were there to enjoy the game and enjoy it with other people for the most part. So it made them good players, right? It made them good people to hang out with and run games for. What so if you guys would be so kind to tell us about the castle where the event will be taking place.
Yeah, we'd love to. Absolutely love to. And I also want to make sure people know early in this interview that you're coming back, and what dates you're coming back for, and when and how they can come and play with you and Ted at the castle, because you're both going to be there at the same time. Which I think is I think he's coming for round 4. Am I right?
It's the third week in September. Is what I know. I have to get my.
7th to 11th of September.
I think I have to get my passport squared away too.
Get your passport.
Well, I have it, but like they changed something like that Real ID or something. I don't even know what it's about. But like it should be good, but I think there's something I have to do now.
Real ID is only for domestic travel. I think you need your passport.
Oh, good. Then I won't have to do anything, hopefully. But I will check into it beforehand.
So you do need your passport, too.
Yeah.
Passport.
Please get a passport.
To anyone who's coming to do get a passport.
Get a passport.
Yes, England is a different country than the United States. So anyone coming from outside of England, please have your...
You're going to be in for a shock if you do not have your passport. Yeah. So,
you won't get on the plane.
So, tell us about the castle itself, where the event's going to be taking place.
Oh yeah. I wish we had Guy here. Guy Schlander is just when we showed up, like we know a bit about the castle and stuff, obviously, but Guy had just gone super deep on it, and like
he was giving tours. He gets up super early. This is a guy from How to Be a Great GM.
We're just raising the bar for you, Dave. We're just telling you. Your competitor was.
No, I'm not even competing with Guy. Guy is a good friend of mine, and I was so happy to see that he was there, and he is one of my favorite people in the world.
I can see why. We really were like, please come back.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, he was up at 5 or whatever, crack of dawn, ready to like give tours of the castle, and so he knew all this history. And I thought, oh, geez, I should go on that tour with Guy because I know all about the castle. But it's a 15th century castle. It was had a bit of a storied history with the ownership. Went back, I think it was built on even older ruins, etc. But when it was declared a castle, it was because the guy who owned it really just wanted a castle, and so called in a favor from the king to have it declared a castle. And because at that time, fortified manor houses were really more of the, there's no moat, there's no like motte and bailey. It's not a medieval castle.
Yeah.
Most of those are mostly ruins now, but it is a bona fide castle.
And it's seen some action, like people were kidnapped from it during the revolution, during like the Civil War in the 1600s, and
we should know more about our castle.
We should know more about
it doesn't,
castle. But I know that it's seen action, and it was fortified because there were like kidnappings.
Leave in the comments. Go find out about Lumley Castle. Leave in the comments about our castle. And how
there's a ghost. There's a ghost called Lily of Lumley.
Oh yeah, there's a ghost.
The story is that she was thrown down a well by some evil priests because she wouldn't marry the person they wanted her to, or something.
I know this.
Made up, but that's the story around the castle. So Lily of Lumley is the ghost, and it's listed as like one of the most haunted buildings in England. So if you're into like ghosts, that's
the Halloween castle.
I know that fact because so we were supposed to have a different castle, and we ended up at Lumley, and we did a bunch of research and incorporated elements from the other castle into our campaigns. And and found out like the day before that we were leaving, like, oh, we're not going here. So we had done a little bit of research and made some tweaks. And one of the players in my game, they were looking for their daughter, and everyone was kind of like they kind of traveled from someplace else by magic. And one of the reasons they were brought there is because their daughter, like I made their daughter Lily, and like they ended up getting like boons and magic items from the ghost. But they were able to like put the ghost to rest, so he was able to like he was able to solve his daughter's unfinished business, and like I incorporated that element into the session.
Yeah, people love that. I mean, having what it's like when you manage to weave something into a game, right? Like it always adds to that feeling of like, oh wow, what really? That's this thing. Like, makes you look like a genius DM when you can layer in any of those things. So that's a good opportunity.
But the original castle.
So like we have people ask us sometimes, like, how did you choose your castle and so on, and we researched like every castle in the UK pretty much. Like pretty much, if you said a castle and you're like, oh yeah, I know that. And people say, why do you have it here? Well, I can tell you exactly why, because I know the number of rooms. And anyway, what we find really difficult is finding a castle that's castle-y enough that you can stay at.
Yeah, like so the criterion is got to be a castle, like literally a castle.
Genuine castle.
And I know that it has various definitions across Europe, etc., but like it has to be castle-y. Even if it's technically a castle, but it doesn't have crenellations or like something you can be like, yes, that is a castle. You can like take a selfie.
There are the arrow
I'm in a castle. There are the arrow slits, like or whatever it is. It has to be castle-y enough. A lot of the castles in Europe are very turned into museums. So a lot of them are like, there's really cool castles out there, but it's like, could you all sleep in it?
Right.
Sort of the second point is it comfortable, like a luxury, nice place to stay? That is a tough one, right? A lot of castles are, even some of the most beautiful castles that you can stay in are sort of like furnished by IKEA, don't have very good heat, and cold, and it's still cool, but it's a much more targeted group of people who are into that. What we're going for is like, anyone can take a vacation if you've never played D&D, or it's not like you just want to do something different and like go to D&D castle and just be comfortable and happy and like have
a good vacation.
Yeah, have all of the things that would go along with that. And so when you cross section these things, like has to be castle-y enough, has to be big enough, has to be comfortable enough to fit everyone, and also have enough gaming spaces, right? So that there's these beautiful rooms where people play. You end up with like a couple of castles, and like Lumley is one of them.
And it's got proper like dungeony spaces, like proper catacomby kind of spaces, like stone walls and dark halls, and it's a labyrinth. You gotta, it was. I was there.
You can get lost in is great.
Yeah, you definitely get lost.
I still can't get from one side of the castle.
I know.
I just give up. I found that it's faster to just start moving quickly in a direction, and then you'll eventually get there, rather than actually.
I was still finding secret passages. Like they're like secret passages to get around. I was still finding them. Even at the end of our third event,
So it's a pretty cool castle. We love Lumley, and we've worked with them a lot before, and they just had a good experience. And it took years to figure out where to have it, and got it dialed in for a bit.
So the last time that I went, I was at both Lumley and Langley, and I felt like Lumley felt more.
In France as well, right?
Yes, in France as well. So Lumley felt more castle-y on the inside, and Langley felt more castle-y on the outside.
On the outside, that's a good way to put it. Langley's a gorgeous castle. It really is. I mean, it's a lot smaller. So what we need to do, right? For what we need, we didn't have quite as much space. So it was like it had that great lounge area in the main floor in the middle. Like it was really cool, but it was harder to get gaming spaces because everyone just wanted to hang out in their room, which was good problem to have, but Lumley just is really big. Like it is a big castle. We can sprawl out and take it over, and like really be able to expand to have enough spaces and stuff throughout it.
I would say one of the differences I noticed was like driving up to them, right? Like when you drove up to Langley, it's just this big block, right, that sticks up into the sky. But then but Lumley is deceptive because it's so spread out. It doesn't look as big as it is.
Right. You kind of feel like you keep getting closer and closer, and it doesn't get there. You're like, wait, how far away is that?
Yeah.
Because it's so big. You see it when you come around the corner. If you come from the right angle, you'll see it on the hill in the distance, and you think that it's not very far away because it's so big. But it's a really cool space.
It has a great hall with very much. It's got a very kind of Gryffindor feeling.
Oh, totally.
A great hall, like a proper one with like minstrel mezzanines and so it's got all the moods. It's a kind of neat because it has a lot of different variety of types of spaces. It's got those really dungeony spaces, and then it's got more like it's got the Great Hall, the Parents' Hall.
And this year we did You Meet in a Tavern. So our events start with You Meet in a Tavern, which is basically an opportunity to get everyone to meet in a tavern. And this year we did the tavern in Newcastle. So you meet at the tavern in Newcastle. So like zero travel, you just get there by train or by plane or whatever. shuttle you just to the tavern and let you unload, you know, and mingle with a bunch of other jet lag folk in the.
While we unload your bags at the hotel.
Yeah, we shuttle all the bags. So you don't have to worry about it. And there was a cool space. What was it called? The name of the tavern that we did in Newcastle.
Saint.
Sure to be.
We're so off on our information. It's early for us here. We're on the West Coast. Our brains haven't worked out.
It's a really cool old like monastery.
Yeah.
Right in Newcastle. It's like down to Newcastle. So we have that little thing, and then shuttle everyone to the castle. So a couple of things have changed since we did it, since you came. And we do a bit of a welcoming ceremony when you get there. So everyone's exhausted, right? Everyone's like ready to party, but it's like just got off of the plane. And then we have like a little greeting ceremony at the front of the castle where you meet your DM and get called out, and then you hit session 0. And then in that session 0, make sure everyone's, you know, because we want people to be as engaged as possible. If people, we have a digital tavern that once you know, are allocated to a table and are ready to, you know, engage with the DM, you go to a digital tavern and you can communicate and get characters ready and talk with your table, etc. But it's the first time people are meeting in person. And if you don't have to engage beforehand, right? Like this is a vacation. If you don't make your character before you show up, that still needs to be fine. So session 0 happens on that first night. Make sure everyone's up to speed, and the DM can catch anyone up that needs to, and then you hit the ball. And then we have the Barovian Ball, which is a simple but delightful little ceremony. We found that just having the opportunity to mingle at the castle and get some of the excitement out. Because one thing, and this is something maybe I can get your thoughts on, is people don't necessarily realize how much D&D they're about to play. So they come in thinking like, just this feeling of like, you know, you want to meet all the other people and stuff. And so we give them the ball so that they actually get that. Then the next morning, 9 a.m., you know, half the tables are rolling dice already after, you know, breakfast, and it goes to like all day. And, you know, you get to mingle at the meal times and stuff like that, but it's D&D all day and all night. And then you got the one shots in between to keep everyone rolling. One of the, so that's the, I don't know if that's too different than how we did it. Maybe it's similar to how we did it when you were there.
It definitely was similar. Are you codifying the sessions like you did in the very first one, or is it going to be a free for all like in the second castles where like the games were running at all different times?
Yeah, so we have to. There's so many people in the castle, we stagger the rooms. So you have like 3-4 hour blocks a day, and you'll get 2 out of those 3 blocks, and then they'll rotate. So you might have the morning and afternoon one day, the afternoon, the evening the other, the morning and then the evening. So you'll always have one free block, and then that free block you can use to play one shots, or you can, you know, do some of the activities that we have around. We found people like having a mini painting corner that actually was like a nice relaxing thing for people to go and socialize. A lot of people had never painted minis before and stuff, so we had you know, minis primed and ready for painting there. And you know, one of the days we bring in some external activities. Kind of got rained out on one of them, but we had an escape room.
Yeah, we did the escape room as an option.
What else did we do? There was
birds,
we did falcons.
We did falcons, axe throwing, and archery.
Yeah.
We're looking at duck herding, which sounds hilarious, but it's like a traditional medieval sport of duck herding, where you have to direct the dog to herd the ducks, sort of like sheep herding, but with ducks. That's one we're looking at for future. We're looking at incorporating a ball as like an in-game experience / one-shot option. So kind of like what we do at the Barovian Ball, but just a little bit more in-depth, a little more involved, so your characters can go to a ball in-game.
Yeah.
In-game, or is it a LARP? Or is it like a one-shot or like LARPing?
Kind of like it's an experience you can take. So you can take your players to the ball, and there'll be something about the game. We'll work with the DMs, so, you know, like they have to find a clue at the ball. They have to, you know. Yeah, it's a thing. So this is so one of the things that went well is we had NPCs. We're still figuring a lot of things out, but the NPCs that came, like we had some actors come and play at your table. And one of those actors this year was Kellen Coleman, who people might know from The Office and BoJack Horseman and some other things. The newsroom, you know. Anyways, she's awesome. And so she would do things like, for example, was it Mark's table? I think it might have been at Guy's table.
At someone's table. Anyway, she was at all the tables, but like at one of the tables, they said, okay, I need you to just come in and be the Raven Queen and give out these prophecies. And she was like, okay, when? And he's like,
whenever you want, just burst in and start delivering prophecies. That was and so she just like got a little bit done up with like, and then just
crazy bird eye.
Yeah, so while they're playing, she would burst in as the NPC, the Raven Queen, start dispensing prophecies, and apparently some of the timing was really funny because it wasn't coordinated, and she would like burst in right at these like very inappropriate or inopportune moments for the cast and start delivering these prophecies that they had to pay attention to, while and then turned out to be one of the antagonists at the end, turned on them, and it was part of the big bad. But a little bit of flavor to add into the game like that. And so we're looking at, and as a DM, that's hard. It's hard to account for if we're like, hey, what would you like to do with this NPC or an actor at your table? It takes a lot of prep work. But what we're thinking is if we're just saying, this actor is going to be at your table during this session, right? Yeah. Then you're like, okay, I can write to that. I can work around that, right? Like, sure, they might. And so now we're thinking about like, what are some experiences that we could say, like, okay, this will be going on at this time. If there's going to be the ball or the dance during this block or on this day, and you can bring your players to as part of your game and, write around it, right? Give them things to write around and experiences or people in the game. Because yeah, those are the little touches that really kind of, our goal is to break D&D, Dave. And I think we're doing it. Like, I think, people come and they have the game and they're like, you can't get that game again. You can't go back home. It's like, no matter what you do, you're not going to have that experience until you come back.
Callum Coleman's not going to burst in on your home.
Yeah.
Dressed as the Raven Queen.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get to go to like a full-on ball and look for clues around people dancing and music.
Right.
Actually, with candlesticks. I mean, maybe you could, but that would be pretty hard.
I'm sure people. I would not underestimate anyone in this community.
Funny story, right? Are you guys familiar with True Dungeon?
If I say no, does that make me?
No, cool? Not really. So I didn't like. It's a more recent thing. Like I didn't know about before Nerdarchy, but it's been around for quite some time. I want to say like 20 years, right? And they have them at a bunch of the big conventions. It's basically a D&D flavored escape room that existed before escape rooms existed. And it literally started from the owner. I believe his name is Jeff. The owner lived in a college town, so like he would have players for his games, but then they would like leave and go on to back to wherever they're come from. So he started having like these events where he would just like once a year invite everybody back, and he would create these like props, and they just got more elaborate and more elaborate and more elaborate until like he grew it into this thing called True Dungeon, which is been around for a while. If you ever get a chance, like Gen Con Origins.
Sounds like our people.
Yeah. You should definitely check it out. But it's cool. Like you have to solve puzzles, and it's very like physical. They have monsters, and fighting the monsters is basically you play shuffleboard. And there's different hit zones, based on the monster and the shuffleboard, and depending on what kind of character you're playing, there's different rules for how you can do it. Like if you're playing a ranger and you fight with two weapons, you might have to do one and then the other. Or if you're a monk, you might have to do both at the same time.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
what a great idea. But like all these things, and if I get romantic about the event, is that all of these things are about breaking D&D. So you have an experience, but really it's about justifying your vacation time for the game, and it's the game itself that really creates the magic, right? Like a lot of these things you can get at other places, but for example, in 2019, I tried running a game just to get the experience of what it's like, because I wanted to know what our DMs are going through, and I wanted to play D&D in a castle. So I DM'd a game for like some friends and a couple people during the event, and I like took whatever spaces weren't being used by the other players and stuff, but I just wanted that experience to know what it's like. And I found there were some of those moments were the best gaming moments of my life, and it was because everyone was so invested. Everyone was there just 1,000%. Everyone had everything taken care of. Everyone was there with this attitude, and you have the time to create these arcs. Like one of the arcs is I did this session. What I like to do is I like to do a little session 0 with players beforehand, where we just role play a little bit of something. Anything could be a moment in their childhood or anything, and it gets the juices flowing so that when everyone gets together, you don't have that storming phase that takes up usually a couple of hours to get people into that, and they don't necessarily have the DM time to do it. So anyways, I did this, and I had this story about with one of the players about how, when he became a warlock, was a coming of age story where his grandmother, who there were tieflings that lived in caravans, and he had this experience where he, as part of his coming of age, she took him to another dimension to meet this giant demon, and this Kakistos. Yeah, this giant demon, as you do. And the giant demon made a bunch of, threatening comments or whatever. And afterwards, she said, I'm naming you after the demon Kakistos because your fates are intertwined, right? And give this whole prophecy. I had no damn clue where that prophecy was going. I just laid out a prophecy, right? And then the whole game goes, and it comes down to the fact that they're trying to rescue, a promised one. And there's a bunch of human sacrifices happening, as you do. And so they're saving all these people from this prophecy. But what I did is the twist where, the bad guys they were fighting were actually trying to sacrifice the promised one to stop this evil demon, a different evil demon from entering. They were trying to keep the portal closed with these sacrifices, right? And so they were secretly making these sacrifices. They were evil, but they had this common aligned incentive of not allowing this demon to enter. But they didn't know that, of course. And so they rescue everyone, thus allowing the demon to enter the world, which wasn't supposed to happen. That was losing, was actually winning. So it's trying to be fancy. But it all comes down to they rescued everyone except the one person that was going to end the world. And so the demon comes in, and I'm revealing how they've failed and the world's about to end. And I'm not getting there's no outs left, right? It's not really their fault, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and it's awesome. And then the player, he calls on this prophecy. And I was like, what are you talking about? He says, well, apparently my fate's intertwined with this Kakistos demon. And this, I try and convince this demon coming through that they should take me instead. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But then I realized, oh my God, it does make sense, because he didn't know this, but in the backstory, there's a connection between those two demons, and they're arch enemies. And if and so there actually is a chance. I'm like, okay, 25 DC, persuasion check. I gave him a 25 DC. The game was over. Everyone was going to die. The world was going to end.
Yeah.
25 DC, check. And he just picks up the die and says, I have +5. Boom, natural 20. Save the world. And so there's those just screaming, you can imagine, just making a DC 25 check with a nat 20 on the 2 o'clock in the morning as the Steven's coming through. And anyway, so saves the world in this moment. And it's that's the game, but that only happened because we were able to set that arc and have that space and play that whole long story and have the opportunity for everyone to be there, having that, keeping that energy alive for 3 days straight to make this arc perfectly work well. So I don't know. It was a bit of a long story about that game, but it's that's what I remember about my great experience at the castle, is the opportunity to have these intense moments in the game itself.
With the right player, there are no throwaway comments.
What's that?
So with the right player, there are no throwaway comments. Like you said, you just came up with the thing, and it was kind of flavor. Right. But
yeah,
we forget as GMs, people latch on to what we say sometimes.
Yeah, I wanted it to be that there was, some impetus and some direction. I just didn't, you don't have to have it all baked, right? It can be a half-baked pie, and we're this will get baked by the end of the game somewhere. But that's what we say it's about the game, and the origin story. I know we've told this before on your podcast, but the origin story of the castle was from a personal trip that I took with friends back in 2017, where we all went and played D&D for a weekend and realized, man, this would be a lot more fun in a castle.
Yeah.
When you get that many guys about our age playing D&D for 3 days straight, things get, it's not very luxurious, right? And we realized, hey, if we're going to take vacation time, let's take a vacation. And that was, part of the purchase.
Let's do it right. So what is the upcoming lineups that you guys still have?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to correct my earlier statement, because I just did a quick search on my phone while Cam was talking. And you are coming September 14th to 18th. So at least September 14th to 18th at Lumley Castle, we have Dave and Ted of Nurki DMing, among many other people. Yeah, so we have 6 more events.
We have some new DMs.
We have a bunch of new DMs.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the people watching are obviously fans of Nerd.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So
that was a non sequitur. That wasn't meant to be like.
There's other people coming. There's other names. No. But yes, the Nerdarchy fans who want to come and play with Dave and Ted, that would be the date. To be September 14th to 18th. That's when you guys are there. We have we're just
so the new, I'm bringing it up because I always forget. So we have new DMs, new as in recently announced-ish or haven't been. Okay, whatever. We've got do you want to go?
Do you want to make the announcement? He wants to announce some big news. Well, we think it's pretty impressive, exciting.
Am I allowed to announce?
You can announce it. It's on the website. It's there. It's open. It's public news.
All right. Well, the McElroys are coming. I don't know if you know who Travis and Clint McElroy from the Adventure Zone.
Okay.
And
yes.
My brother and me. Anyways, yeah, that's the whole news. That they're coming and they're going to be running 2 tables. Yeah, they're running 2 tables, one at a time, but for over 2 events. People who know the Adventure Zone know it well and love it well, and the McElroys are much loved in the community. So very, very excited that they're.
So coming. If you come to either of their tables, the other one will also be there as running one-shots and playing NPCs. So if you play with, say, at Clint's table with Clint as your campaign DM, Travis will be at that same castle, and you'll get the chance to play with him as a one-shot GM. And you'll also maybe be doing some NPCing at tables around the castle, and vice versa if you come play at the other. So
we got this guy Dave Fryan.
We got this guy Dave Fryan. Apparently, he's a guy.
This guy, I don't know if you've heard of him. We had some new DMs come. I'm not sure if when they'll be able to come back, when we'll be able to have them, but hopefully soon. Dice Cream Sandwich from TikTok and Ginny D from YouTube, another YouTuber you might know. They came this year.
She's a cosplayer and a wonderful human.
Gabe Hicks.
He's new. He's a pretty big deal. James Gaines.
These are all big deal. Everyone's a big deal.
Everyone's a big deal.
All our big deal. But
GM Tim is coming back.
Tim, yeah.
From Vancouver. Guy Flanders is coming back. He's coming back for another
Hannah
round.
Rose.
Amanda Hammond, who wrote what did she wrote a big.
We've got some awesome writers.
Amanda Hammond's written a lot of things. It would be hard to pick one. So.
Amanda Hammond and Hannah Rose.
Puffin Forest.
Puffin Forest, Puffin Forest, the other YouTuber.
Yep, Ben. He's giant too. He's not tiny like his little cartoon character he draws at all.
So, imagine the scale larger on his bio photo. We have what was I going to say? It was going to be fun.
Elisa Teague is coming back.
Elisa's coming back.
Satine is coming back with Jameson.
But I was going to tell the story about the writing credits. So Will Doyle came. Is he coming back? I'm not sure when he's coming back. I say people coming back is not like they're never coming back. It's just like this particular set of castles. Hopefully everyone comes back for all time for all castles would be amazing. But
who wrote Wild Beyond the Witchlight?
Yeah, he worked on it, right? Like Will Doyle was one of the writers on Wild Beyond the Witchlight. And so the funny thing is, he was originally going to do he was going to run one shots for Beetle and Grimm and run the platinum edition of Wild Beyond the Witchlight and do one shots from it to, so people could see it from one of our sponsors. And then something happened, and one of our DMs couldn't make it relatively last minute
because they didn't have a passport, Dave. They didn't have a passport.
We won't say names,
but
get your passport sorted. And so people were like, "Oh my God, what are you going to do? We don't have a DM." And I was like, "What are you talking about? We've got Will Doyle." And then I said, "Will, do you want to run something from Wild Beyond?" And this is me sticking my foot in the mouth because I never know what's going on. I was like, "Are you going to be comfortable running a game from Wild Beyond the Witchlight?" And he was like, "Yeah,
I wrote it."
Oh, you didn't realize it when you asked?
Oh,
yeah.
So the cool thing about having the writers is he got to run stuff that didn't make it in the book. He got to run the things, and he knew the characters that he wanted to make the way that they were, and people just had an absolute blast. So great DM. So I was just pointing that out because sometimes we have people that people may not necessarily have. People know Will Doyle, but not everyone. They're not necessarily
they're not necessarily on
or
YouTubers
or
So the nice thing that you guys do is it's a combination of public facing content creators like YouTubers, industry people that maybe people aren't familiar with them, even though they've handled their work time and time again, and also celebrities as well. So
also coming is James Wyatt and Ray Winninger from Wizards. Also, Jeremy Crawford is coming back.
Oh yeah,
he's coming back.
Old news.
No, he's coming. But the cool thing that Jeremy is doing this year is he's not running a table. He's coming to run one-shots, but what he's told us that he's planning, we don't have all the details yet because he has not shared.
I don't know if he knows how much work he's signed up for, but if Jeremy takes something on, he's going to do it like 100%.
So what he's planning to do is that he's going to provide an in-game experience for all of the tables. And this is a Halloween castle. So this is from October 27th to 31st. So this is the most Halloween-y of the Halloween castles. And he's going to do something with every table. So everyone who comes to that event at the end of October is going to get to game with Jeremy Crawford as their DM for some portion of their time at the castle.
Is it 13 tables? Is that the correct number? Or is it?
Yeah.
Dave, we should get these people on your show and just talk about the game that they're planning on doing for the castle. Like, tell us about your castle game. That'd be cool.
I've actually talked to a lot of them, but I'm definitely down to have them on again. I mean, sometimes I do these and it's just an excuse to hang out with some of my internet friends for an hour and just talk about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I didn't know that. Did I know that Hannah Rose she worked on the Tal'Darai campaign? I didn't know that. Is she gonna run? We should get her to run Tal'Darai. Can she run Tal'Darai?
I don't know.
That'd be cool. Hey Hannah, are you gonna run Tal'Darai?
Yeah. Well, Hannah's another person that's worked on a bunch of stuff. Now, there was a question earlier. There's been a couple questions. I also have more questions about duck herding. Right.
And you can ask our guest appearance from Buffy the Vampire Slayer here. We've got just watching our back. So
nice.
I just realized it's just like so clearly right in the middle of the shot.
Your shrine to Buffy. Yeah. Someone did ask about the price for D&D in the castle, which I believe you guys kind of have like a range.
Well, yeah. So a lot of people ask about the cost. Turns out castles are expensive. Who knew, right? It's they're big and we have a lot of talent come in, etc. But a lot of it is really just the castle. But it comes down to we have a flat rate for registration, and that gets you a table at your a table gets you a seat at your table with your DM for your 3-day campaign, and that's $28.50 US.
And includes all meals.
Includes meals. Includes
the tavern event, all activities, everything.
Except no, we don't include alcohol. So if you want to get drinks, you can. There's cash bar, but it's all inclusive. Otherwise, we want people to not have to worry about anything. You come, you play, like that's it.
And including drunks.
What's that?
Including drunks.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because like one of the things, it's not a big deal, but we find that like alcohol doesn't necessarily lend well to D&D. So like people can have drinks and stuff at the table, but you don't want people like like you would at a resort, right? Like people go to a resort to drink, right? You're there, you're like
once you add the drinks into the all-inclusive, people will just drink more than they normally would.
Yeah.
And that doesn't lend for a good game. Like
no.
Tables are really
Tables
are really good at regulating. Like the DMs are very experienced, and everyone is there for the same reason. And
hasn't been an issue.
Yeah, it's not an issue. It's just, So $28.50 is all inclusive for the registration, and then rooms start at like $200 a night. I don't know.
Around it's $212.50 per night, based on double occupancy. If you get a shared room.
Yeah,
or if you buy like a double room, that's per person.
And so it ends up being 3 nights, 4 nights.
4 nights.
4 nights. And so sometimes we get a bit of sticker shock because they're seeing the price of the room for 4 nights. Especially if you're getting one of the like fancy suites, right? If you get one of the fancy suites, you want to have the like big luxury vacation.
4-poster. And I stayed in one of those rooms this time. And
it was nice.
It's worth. Oh my gosh, it's worth it. I'm just. I
was so mad. She had this amazing room because we ended up with this room in the second round that she took, and I had this crap room. No, it was a crap room. I shouldn't say that.
There's no crap rooms. There's no crap rooms at the castle.
I was just mad.
At Lumley, I had the 4-poster bedroom, which was amazing. With I never take baths, but it had this like big like freestanding footed tub.
To waste if you didn't. Seriously, it's like you're doing all of this, and it really, I found, because I'm usually like sharing a room with a staff member, or actually I'm sharing a room with Elisa Teague. Every time I was sharing a room with Elisa Teague somehow, or like And this time I ended up
good
with
company
the
at least.
Room.
No,
I was like,
my only problem was that we only had a single room, but I was sharing with the photographer, and it was actually a really nice room now I think about it, because we had the view of the courtyard and everything, but it was that I had to share, and so we had all the camera equipment in there and all my stuff everywhere. wasn't. And then I went to visit Tara, and she had this beautiful, huge suite.
We just hung out in my room all the time.
That was great.
Actually, that's what we ended up doing. Like,
actually, the big rooms sell out fastest. I would say it.
Yeah.
You'd think like, oh, people are trying to like get the lowest rate, but the fact is like, no, it's not a cheap vacation. It's a you know,
it's up there with a cruise.
It's a premium vacation, and it's a great experience. You're going to have a great time. On the one hand, you're not going to spend that much time in your room. You're going to be gaming all the time. But also people are like, I want the full castle experience. I am going to a castle. I want to have the whole thing. I'm already spending a bunch of money. It's a little bit more to get that big fancy room and feel like the queen of the castle. I'm going to do it. And actually those sell out faster. But we do offer the shared room option, and that means you'll be rooming with a stranger, and that's for sort of like, you know, the single guys are like, it's just a place to crash, man. I'm going to be just gaming all the time anyway, or whatever, you know. So
it was feedback. We had feedback after the first round. People really wanted to find a lower cost option. So we tried the idea of like, okay, well, we could share the rooms. We could split it even further, because some people organize their own shared room, right? Like you can always book with friends and share the room, but some people, you know, like if you're coming alone, that was harder to do. So we added the shared room option, and it went really, it's been great. People go, it's been.
But like you said, like I had the one of the like deluxe rooms at Lumley, and then I went to Langley, and I was stuck with Constantine. Constantine's great.
Oh no!
In the servants' quarters.
You're such a trooper. We our DMs and staff and helpers and stuff have just they do whatever it takes to get that game for the players. So we're always very grateful for what the talent does to take it to the next level, whether it's sharing a room with staff or no offense, Constantinos. It's been really humbling how much people are willing to throw just to make the dream alive, right? It's a shared dream. A lot of people, the name says it all, D&D in a castle, and like the vast majority of people we talk to where it was like, well, what got your attention or whatever, and it's just the name. D&D in a castle speaks for itself. It's like, that's a thing. How do I make this happen? And for some people, we understand not everyone can make it, but there's there's a lot of people looking for interesting vacation ideas, and that's the thing. It's not an expensive game of D&D. It's an alternative vacation, and as a vacation option, where instead of some people, I've been on vacation and they're fun, but it's not necessarily very social. You're not necessarily making friends on vacation. That's a hard thing to do. One of the things I found at D&D in a castle is people leave staying in touch, like really, really staying in touch. It forms a community around that table. And my favorite thing I would say is at the end of the event, sitting in the castle. So there's a library bar. So there's like a lounge that's like the old library. They've turned into a lounge, and it's quite cozy. And just sitting in there and hearing the stories from the players who've just finished their campaign. They tend to pour in there on the last night and sit around, and and they just want to talk to each other about what just happened and how this was. And, sitting there and just listening in on these stories of the games is just awesome, and how they stay in touch on the digital tavern, and they're all sharing contact info. It feels like summer camp, like
it really is summer camp. And like when you go on vacation, normally, so I have a young family, and I always say to my husband, we always like to go on vacation with friends, and because we're like, otherwise we'll just be like arguing in a different location, like on vacation, and you spend so much of your vacation going, okay, where are we going to eat for dinner? How are we going to get there? Where do we park? What are we going to do tonight? Can we get tickets? Is there what we all have different ideas about what show we want to go to? You spend so much time and so much effort in your vacation that way. And this way, it's like, it's all done. You just show up. And even if you show up single, you're now in a group,
instant friends.
Instant friends. And the game like breaks down those barriers, right? It forges friendships. It forces, like, it creates an environment that walks you through making those friendships. So you're not just like an awkward person like me being kind of shy in a room of strangers trying to pretend like they say the loneliest place.
You can be like that, but everyone else is too. And it's
yeah, but you're in the game, and you're carried through the game by your DM, and that it's a different experience from say a con or something like that. It's very different from that.
But there's also you're reminding me of some people whose first game of D&D is at D&D in a castle, and that's awesome because we've just like
So how often have you seen that? Because I know at our when we did the castle,
every castle we have people. Well, just about every castle we have someone who's never played before. Like at your castle, we had a mother and son team.
Mason and
no, I don't think. Let's not say their names on YouTube.
Definitely not that. No, so there was a mother and son, and it was so cool to see the mom who'd never played D&D before. By the final, the final session, because we had like run it like an epic and brought everyone together. Like when it got to her turn, she's like, "I'm going to do this." It does that, and like she'd never played before. She was playing a bard, so it's not a spellcaster, so it's not like a simple character. And she was like so on fire and so on point, and just like knew everything, from having because that at that point it had been her 6th session, and they're so close together. The information just sticks better.
And they came back this year. We just got to see them again.
They were at the castle in the spring.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. And she started playing I think she started playing with her friends. Like she drug her friends into it when she got home. I think Doug was telling me. Because
we've had people. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say because they're at Doug's table, but it's like that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, so they came back. It was great to see them. A lot of people come back not thinking they think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and then they come.
Can't get enough.
And then we gotta come back.
I have to get back to the castle, whatever it takes.
It was really nice to see everyone in person post COVID, but it's tough to get that. The momentum in like the events industry obviously has been a terrible industry to be in for the past few years. But,
I know the one of the players at my table, I think they did all 4 rounds or 3 rounds of the castle.
Yeah, we've got some people that just come to every round.
Yeah.
It's like this is how we're spending our income.
And they're not necessarily what rich. You're thinking.
It's not rich people.
They make it happen.
This is what they want to do.
That's their priority, and that's what they work for. And they
Well, he worked in sanitation in New York, but that might be code. I'm not entirely sure.
I know exactly what you're saying. Dave.
Oh yeah. No, there's people that come from all walks of life, and
the diversity is really amazing. And people who've never played before, actually something that I discovered is that everyone fights over the newbies. That's something I wasn't really expecting or didn't know would be a thing. They're like, no, I want the new player, I want the first timer. And the players, and it's not like, oh, there's a newbie at our table, we can't, or whatever. There's nothing like that. There's like, oh, I get to share this with you. It's almost like I want to be the one to, can I say, deflower the new player? I shouldn't say that, but whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I get to give them their first experience with this, and it's so
I would say it's more like being an evangelical and getting to bring new members into the fold, into the flock.
For me, it's watching people the little things that you still like, but like I had a player when I was playing with a new player, and an NPC cast Cure Light Wounds, but instead of casting Cure Light, I just described what happened. I was like, oh, they move their hand over the wound on your leg, and it just disappears behind it, and they freaked out. They were like, what? It just disappeared. Like, to them, Cure Light Wounds were the most basic spells. It was just this like really cool experience that they had, and you're like, yeah, this game is awesome. It really reminds you of what makes the game unique and different than any other game. Or I had this guy once, we played this we were playing a one-on-one because I was teaching him to play D&D, and he was supposed to escort because he wanted to play this super powerful character, so he made this like totally broken homebrew and like was just really into it. I was like, yeah, let's go with it. You've never played before, you just want to play, do this. And so he was so I gave him a squishy to protect, because that's always fun if someone wants to play someone OP, gives them, so he was supposed to escort this magistrate across like the country on this long voyage, right? And in the first battle, of course, he pays no attention to the squishy, fights all the monsters, squishy gets eaten, right? The whole boat that they're on just gets destroyed. And I was like, okay, well, now you're in there. And he's like, okay, so where do we go back to? And I was like, oh no, there's no save point.
There's no going back. You can't uneat the bishop.
That's when he got and I just seen the lights go on. Yeah. Like, oh, this is anything can happen, right? Like those are the moments that playing with new people give you, those little instances of proving why the game is so different and unique and fun.
It is. It is an experience like no other. I got a question for you, Tara. Have you played any games yet?
Oh, and that's always the question that comes up. So we always say Cam is the D&D and I am the castle. That's how we like split our identities in this company, which is good because Cam is, for those who don't know, Cam is the D&D nerd. So Cam was one of the Stranger Things kids is how we always describe it. He was, but even more, like that's what we always say. In Stranger Things, they don't, it's not realistic enough in terms of just how much D&D you play when you play D&D.
Yeah.
Like, you never stop playing D&D. Like the second
you're not solving any real life mysteries.
Yeah, so like all night from the time.
They did capture it with Will Doyle, doing the, you guys want to play D&D? Maybe we'll play D&D tomorrow. You guys want to play D&D tomorrow? That was
not Will Doyle, just Will.
Not Will Doyle. Will Doyle may
is
have
a
said
DM.
that. He probably
said that and he was like
Will
in the
Byers.
80s.
Different Will.
Yeah. So, but Cam, I remember. I always say I was D&D adjacent growing up.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the smell of D&D. Having like a teenage brother and all his teenage friends in my basement, on the porch somewhere. They were often at his friends' houses, but I knew the D&D was going on around me all the time, and I was like baking a cake right in the kitchen next door because
I think we'll get Tara to play at some point.
There.
We actually fully intended on by now. We're just too busy. Like I only played once in the castle, and that was because I ran a game and set that aside as like a project. But
it turns out that running a business and having other jobs as well takes up a lot of your time, and I think you both have families, so.
Yeah,
we'll get her.
And whenever you do something because you want to have that experience and no one else is offering it, that's how I end up doing stuff. That's how I end up. If I do other events as well. I run the Pride and Prejudice Ball, for example. I can never go to the Pride and Prejudice Ball because I'm running it, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to have that experience. I wanted the ball that I knew how to make, so I made it. But now I'm the maker, not the guest. Same thing with the castle. Like Cam wanted to play D&D in a castle, but he doesn't get to go play D&D in a castle. He just gets to deliver that for other people. And that's
it should be like how to guarantee you don't do the thing you want to do.
Yeah.
But it's a knowledge that if I really want to do this, there must be other people who do too. So I'm going to make that happen. And then there's a gratification in making that happen in a crazy moment when people show up. I'd say that's like the craziest thing is when you've had this idea and this vision and then it's happening. And there are like people you've never met who just bought into it from, not your friends and family that you drag along in costume, like I've done to Cam a million times, but people that just show up and it's like, what are you doing in my dream? Like in my vision, you bought. It's so humbling and incredible. And it's like always makes me cry actually when people just show up and I'm like, I had this idea or this vision and we made it happen and you came. Like it's so amazing when people show up and they're all there and I don't know them, but they're all these people from the real world, from the real world in my crazy dream, and they're making it real for all of us. Anyway, that's a moment.
It's when you have an idea and you don't know if it's a good one or not until you try it, right? And then when the realization is like, oh, people do like this. But you had mentioned like, how you see when you see how excited GMs are to try and get the new players. So that's why every time we see you, we're like, well, have you played yet? Are you going to play?
You're all after me.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like chumming the water for a bunch of sharks. So.
That's funny.
I tell you though, I think Tara would have very high standards on the quality and of the game. So we'll have to get her. I want it to be like for realsies. Like if she's going to play D&D, let's actually have. I mean,
no. It's not going to be D&D. You have to bait the hook properly. So there's a game called, I believe it's called Good Society.
Yeah, you know what? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, and it is called Good Society. And I'm very interested in that game. And we've even talked to the creators of that game about possible collaborations and even doing like a Jane Austen based RPG event, something. I don't know. It hasn't formulated yet, but I have spoken with them. The problem is, so when you're an expert in something, people like want you to do their thing in that way, right? Like, but I don't know. I'd be curious to see. I could try playing that game, but like I'm a total Jane Austen snob, so I don't know if it's not just that I'm a snob, but like what I love in that whole world. So for those viewers who are watching, what he's talking about is a Jane Austen based RPG called Good Society, and it's set in the time of Jane Austen, and it's all about like husband hunting and gaining a fortune and things like, and scandal and things like that, as the sort of game mechanics. And I'm a Jane Austen nerd. So what I love about Jane Austen may not be the same as what makes the game good. Do you know what I mean? So what I love about Jane Austen is like the story that you watch and the pretty fabrics and the arc of the, I don't know. And so I'd be interested to see if that carries through in an RPG.
I think I just realized why it's been hard to get Tara to play D&D. It's because she's the DM.
Yeah, I've often said that. I'd probably go straight to DMing.
Yeah,
like, no, I'm going to make the world here.
You'd be sitting there listening to what the DM's doing, like, no, it's not like that. It's like this. And then want to take over and run the game your own way. There's two kinds of ways of introducing people to D&D. One is to like give them the like, intense story and get them right into that, try and get the depth and the arc and so on and so forth. And the other is show how it's a great way to get an excuse to people to socialize, right? And like have the simple sit around a table and very lighthearted, have a few laughs. And I don't think you've ever seen that, because you've only ever seen the like, we're playing D&D for 3 days, as opposed to like, there's some friends around a table and maybe you get some playing done, and it's an excuse to tell some jokes, because, like I have a rule called the rule of bad acting. And it's so it makes charisma matter for checks, right? Like say you're trying to convince the castle guard to get by. You can have the conversation with the castle guard, but how you portray it doesn't imply how well it went, right? Because your character's maybe more charming than yourself or much less charming, right? And so what you do is you have the conversation, you act it out, and then you roll to see how it really went, right? But you have to do it. And it's the rule of bad acting is like you have to act it as badly as possible if you're not into that, if you're not a role player. That's why I invented the term, so you can talk it through however you want. And so one guy really leaned into this and started trying to convince the town guard that the guy that they were carrying over their shoulder was actually Dave from accounting, who like sent, Dave from accounting sent me to like take this guy or whatever. And so this Dave from accounting joke started, and it was just like, it was hilarious. We've all got these stories of just like nonsensical fun around the table. I think Tara needs to see some of that. We'll drag her into a completely nonsensical game of witty banter and tomfoolery. I think maybe would be the way to go.
So
yeah, otherwise I'm too Slytherin. I got to take over. Otherwise it doesn't work for me. That's why I run the castle, right? Because I'm like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, like making everything happen for everyone.
I recently, like when I say recently, like the last couple years, got my wife into playing gaming and playing D&D and other games. And so like two of the groups that she's in that we play in are more like Cameron said, more relaxed and more kind of laid back. And like she enjoys the social aspect of doing that. And like those groups we tend to focus on like, what's for dinner? What are we having? Are we doing like a potluck or something? Matter of fact, she's not going to be here this weekend. So she's been watching the chat. She's like, no one's asked about dinner. No one's figured out dinner yet. Because it's also kind of like the mom of the group.
Right. Yeah. But there's Cheetos, right?
Yeah.
Powered by Cheetos.
Yeah. So she's like, you guys are going to starve to death without me. I'm like, we'll figure something out.
It's all right.
So we do have something new that I think me and Ted will probably end up running some one-shots of at the castle. We're working on our own RPG now called Zoo Mafia, which is about playing cute, cuddly zoo animals that belong to the mafia and do crimes when the humans aren't looking.
Nice. Fun.
So
that would be really cool.
So we'll be excited to inflict that upon some people.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, we've played some fun. People generally don't tend to sleep at the castle, so everyone's always looking for something to play. I remember played one. It was a one-page RPG called the Honey Heist.
Honey Heist, yeah, with the bear.
Yeah, with the bears. Oh man, that was hilarious. That was really funny. Especially if you got a bunch of people that are up too late in the castle, hanging out, looking for stuff to do. Someone pulled out Honey Heist. It was like, yeah, let's try this.
I believe Casey was the one running it.
Casey, ran that one at Langley. I remember that.
That was
fun. Heist on a train or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, people get up all kinds of things. Like, sometimes, exactly. Guests get up games, one shots, and even although we have like dedicated one shot GMs who come and play their prepared games, but then people volunteer stuff as well. And sometimes the DMs are like, right, let's go do this, or I've got this. So they like to play test content and stuff too. So it gets a chance to play stuff no one's ever played before. Lots of like see stuff before it goes out.
Like Satine and Jameson were playing in their world. They just put out a campaign setting called Solvata. It's like a bard, very bard centric, as you can imagine. Because it's Satine, but their players were playing the world before anyone else, before it had launched, and playtesting content, and participating in developing canon and stuff like that. It was
and actually the guys from Wizards who are coming, Ray Winninger and James Wyatt, it was one of them or possibly both, that are going to be playtesting new D&D content before it comes out. They'll get it. So players that come and sign up with those guys are going to get a chance to play stuff before it comes out, like advanced. They're going to literally have to sign an NDA before they play their game, because it's going to be brand new, unreleased content. So
lots of things.
We are like right up on the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
We gotta jump.
Sorry, what was the question?
Final thoughts before we head on out?
I just want to see everyone get out, and as soon as it's safe and it fits, their comfort level, whether it's D&D in a castle or get back out in person, just in general, seeing people around the table has just been so awesome, and can't wait to see more of it as people are coming out of the woodwork and getting back together in person, and just can't wait to see it all happen.
That's basically it. We hope to see y'all at a castle soon or elsewhere. Just having fun with humans. It's so great. It's great. So lovely, so cathartic.
Well, thank you both for coming on. Much appreciated. It was great chatting with you again. And everyone else, until next time, stay nerdy.